Please join me in the intention that whatever happens, whatever sounds come through me, will travel to those in the world who need this particular vibration. Thank you. Ah.
Hi there. Welcome to another presentation of the Globe Sound Healing Conference. Now we've got Carole Lynne. Hi, Carole.
Hi, David.
Welcome, welcome.
Good to see
Uh,
you.
Carole was happy as a performing artist and as the founder of Quality Performance Coaching. She traveled the U.S. as a musician and presentation coach for business people and educators. Little did she know, in midlife, spirits would begin appearing to her. Surprise, surprise. Needing to understand her gifts, she took spiritualist courses in the U.S. and at the Arthur Finley College in England. She met her mentors, Brenda Loris, Glenn Edwards, and Nora Shaw, and became a CSNU award holder with the Spiritualist National Union in mediumship and public speaking. Red Wheel Weiser published her 5 books: Heart and Sound, How to Get a Good Reading, Cosmic Connection, Are You Psychic or Making It Up? And the award winning book with the Coalition of Visionary Resources, Consult Your Inner Psychic. Starting in 2007, she was featured in the bestpsychicmediums.com, as it has been on ABC News, Fox News, and many internet radio programs. She has traveled internationally as a medium, musician, and spiritual teacher. And then change happened again, and Spirit requested that she work in sound healing. Having worked with disabled children and in nursing homes as a musician, sound healing felt familiar. First, Carole studied with me at Shift Network, quickly moved to our college, Globe Institute, where she graduated with the certificate program. And she's also completed courses with Jonathan Goldman, John Bulow, and Christine Stevens. Wow, cool. It's so funny. I've known you so long and I didn't even know all this.
Well, I wasn't actually going to say all that in class.
Cool, cool. Okay, so what have you been up to lately?
Oh, working on this lecture for the conference
Mm-hmm.
and working on getting my studio together. I've got a lot of different instruments and some of them need to be kind of fixed up. And I'm looking forward to doing a lot of recording.
Uh-huh, cool. So here's the big question. If you had all the money in the world, what would you do to help people?
Feed all the kids that I could possibly feed.
It's just kind of basic, huh?
Well, I feel really strongly about that.
I know I'm not saying it's weird. I think it's like absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking today about how moving forward, I've worked for a long time and maybe I'll work for charity. Maybe I'll work to feed children.
Nice.
So I'm trying to figure that out.
Cool. Okay, so what's your presentation about today?
It's about consciousness, but particularly intuition, which we can use. We can use it as sound healers. We can use it in readings with people. We can use it in our lives. It's a basic thing, but there's certain things that help to bring it out. I've learned over the years. I've had some fabulous teachers, I have to tell you. And there's also a lot of warnings about it.
Mm, mm.
Things to watch out for. And I feel strongly at this point in my life, because I'm an older person, and I feel like I want to share some of the things that I've been through and things that younger people may not have thought of yet, and maybe they don't have to fall in the puddles I fell in.
Oh my God, it's like one of the most important things ever. I mean, for people, because, I mean, if you can get information when you're doing just everything from doing a sound bath to running your life to figuring out relationships, and then, yeah, but sometimes it's like I don't trust mine because sometimes it seems wrong.
Well, sometimes it probably is wrong.
Okay, well, I
And
will let you.
that's
I'll
part of it. That's part of what we'll
right,
talk about. I mean,
right. I'll
that's
let you
yeah.
present, and then we'll talk more about it later because I'm
All
really
right.
really
Hi,
excited about
David.
this. Okay.
Hi. Okay. So my lecture is on consciousness and intuition. And where does this come from? Well, I think of it as coming from source, but I like anyone that I work with to think of it however they think of it. Maybe you call it God, maybe you call it higher power, however you think of it. But I'm usually going to use in this lecture the word either spirit or source. And I'd like to dedicate this lecture to two great teachers. You can see their pictures right above my head. Sri Aurobindo and the mother, they're founders of the Sri Aurobindo Ashram in Pondicherry, India, known to many as Puducherry and fondly known to those who go there a lot as I'm going to Pondi. So they left their bodies years ago, but their teachings stay with us. Their organization is incredible. They create hospitals and eye clinics. And, I asked one of them once, how long do you meditate? I don't mean them, the teachers. I mean, some of the students. How long do you meditate? And they say, well, we meditate as much as we can, but we're too busy, going to the villages and getting houses built. This is the kind of Sri Aurobindo ashram. So I really love these people. This on the side here, the man smiling with the white shirt, that's my teacher, VJ. And I was very fortunate to be able to spend quite a bit of time with him on the times I went to India. And he's also been one of the managers of the Sri Aurobindo Society. And he grew up in the ashram. I think his parents were in the ashram and he grew up there. And he's a marvelous, marvelous person. So I dedicate to them. I am not in any way officially representing the Sri Aurobindo Society. I am a grateful student, a forever student. Okay, so first we're going to talk about simple definition of intuition. I'm going to go to Webster's. They're pretty simple. So, and I quote from Webster's, the power or faculty of attaining to direct knowledge or cognition without evident rational thought and inference, quick and ready insight. And that's a pretty basic definition, quick and ready insight. And I think a lot of people have what I would call simple intuitions. The phone rings and you think you know who it is, and it is, or you're thinking about somebody and then you run into them the next day when you're in the village and you kind of knew you would. Those are simple intuitions and pretty easy for people. But what we're going to talk about more today is getting into deeper intuitions. And I am leaving Webster's dictionary now and going to some quotes that I'm going to read to you by Sri Aurobindo and the mother. Now, I have to say, Sri Aurobindo particularly is not that easy to understand when you first hear it. So when I read it to you, get out of your head. Don't try to think about it. Well, what does she mean there? What did he say? Blah, blah, blah. Just space out a little bit and take it in, because it's kind of like poetry. And it's affected me deeply over the years, some of the things I'm going to read to you. So about Sri Aurobindo in intuition, and I quote, intuition is a power of consciousness nearer and more intimate to the original knowledge by identity, for it is always something that leaps out direct from a concealed identity. It is when the consciousness of the subject meets with the consciousness in the object, penetrates it, and sees, feels, or vibrates with its truth of what it contacts. That the intuition leaps out like a spark of lightning flash from the shock of the meeting. So I want to react to those words a little bit. Some of the words that leap out at me. And if you can do a replay of this, listen to this 10 times, and it can be life-changing sometimes because there's a real energy in there. Intuition is the power of consciousness that we know. It leaps out from a concealed identity. So it's something that's concealed in whatever you're having an intuition about, but somehow you contact that, and that information
leaps out at you and it vibrates with the truth of what it contacts. Now, I love that fact that it says vibrates. And you know, the word vibrates meant a lot to me when I first read it. But then when I went to the Globe course in sound healing and we were talking about vibrations, I realized that's what Sri Aurobindo's talking about. He might not have thought of it exactly the same way we would in sound healing, but he's talking about the vibrates with the truth. And that's what an intuition is. It vibrates with the truth of what it contacts. And the other words I like is the intuition leaps out like a spark or lightning flash from the shock of the meeting. So I have to tell you a story, something that happened to me in the early 80s. I had a friend in college, and he was working with Guru Mai, guru of Siddha Yoga. Many of you probably know who she is. So because my friend was working with her, I decided to go to a lecture that day. So I went, and it was a beautiful lecture, and Guru Mai was just an incredible speaker, and the energy around her, she's lovely. And so when the lecture was over, there was quite a long path she could walk out on. And she walked out, and then other disciples, I guess you would call them, in the room got on the floor, and they put their hands on the floor as if to observe pick up the energy of where she had walked. And me, because I'm what I call a blah, blah, blah person. I see something like that, and if I haven't done it, I always say, nah, it's not going to work. It's amazing that I do what I do because I'm really too skeptical for my life. But at any rate, so I thought, okay, I'll do it. And I got down the floor and I touched it, and I got an electric shock like I have never gotten. Now, I do know that we can get electric shocks sometimes from touching things, especially when a lot of people have been walking there. But this was different. This went through my whole body, and I didn't know what to make of it. In the early 80s, I didn't know I was a medium yet. I knew I was psychic because I'd been tested when I was a kid. But I just didn't know what was happening to me. So I sort of forgot about it. But I look back on that now as an intuition. It was like a lightning flash, and it was a shock of the meeting. I was meeting that energy when I touched the floor. So see what happens. Some of you probably have had the same experience. Okay. Sri Aurobindo describes this deeper intuition, and I quote, "It's an invading mixture or a mental coding or an interception and substitution. There is too a manifold possibility of misinterpretation, which comes in the way of the purity and fullness of its action." This is a very interesting quote. He's really giving us a warning here, which speaks to the question of when I get an intuition, is it right or not? An invading mixture or a mental coding can I don't know how to explain this. Picture the intuition as like a thin line, and picture that's pure, that's right. And around it is a mixture of a mental coding. What do you think's in the mental coding? Your opinions, your thoughts, your emotions. Sip of water time. So both Sri Aurobindo and the mother always taught, receive the intuitions you receive, but then check it out. And it takes a very long time to know if your intuition is correct. But we're going to do some exercises that a little bit later that may give you a way to practice and get some affirmations as to whether what you've gotten is correct or not correct. And that's not always fun, but it's very useful. Let me go to the mother's thoughts. Now, the mother was quite a character. You can see her picture above my head. She was she lived in France a long time, and she was an artist, and I found in one book that she was a medium for a while. But when she went into the Sri Aurobindo ashram, she kind of left that all behind her. So nobody really talked about it. But they were quite welcoming to me. And I said, I'm a medium, and they were very welcoming to me. So there was no problem. But a student asked the mother once, what is an intuition? And the mother said, we all have the powers of intuition, but most of us do not pay attention to what is going on with us. And that's how she talked sometimes. I've seen videos of her. She was very blunt. She was very funny. Mother says, behind the emotions, deep in the being, is a consciousness seated somewhere near the level of the solar plexus. There is a kind of capacity for foresight. So there it is right there. The emotions and our thoughts and our opinions can totally block out our intuition. The intuition comes in a different way. It doesn't come in words. I feel it kind of like a gentle breeze or something just pops into my mind. You know, it's interesting. When I get an intuition and I'm terribly emotional about it, it's usually not true. When I get an intuition that's really from source, it's like it just kind of drops into my mind. There's no emotion to it. It's just, this is the way it is. It's a totally different quality. And that's how you find out over a period of time whether your intuitions are right. Partly because they'll be proved right or wrong, but also you'll get to know the difference between the feel of it. And I can't teach you to do that. I can give you some exercises and you can work with it yourself, because it's how you feel it. It's not how I feel it. Maybe you won't feel it like a gentle breeze. Maybe you'll feel it like a hit in the head. I don't know. It depends. Let's see what else the mother says. Okay, a kind of capacity for foresight, but not in the form of ideas, rather in the form of feelings, almost a perception of sensations. Now, that's what I was just kind of saying. And one of the reasons I didn't put a PowerPoint slide up today with the words on it is that the minute we go to a PowerPoint slide, we're organizing everything. I mean, they're great for organizing things, and those slides are wonderful for many, many subjects. But I don't like it for this subject because my goal is for you to become disorganized, not organized. If you're real organized, it's harder to get intuitions because there's no room for it to come in. You've got it all straightened out. This is the way it is. There has to be a very open mind. You don't want to walk around that all the way in your life, but when you're trying to do certain kinds of work, it really pays to get out of your mind. It's very important. Okay. She goes on, when one is going to decide to do something, and there's sometimes a kind of uneasiness, an inner refusal. And usually if one listens to this deeper indication, one realizes that it was justified. Now, I'll bet everybody listening today, or whoever listens a month from now, a year from now, has had that experience where, you know, you're going to do something, but you're just saying, I don't want to do it. And that may be, then you're going to say to yourself, well, is that fear or is that a real intuition? And then you have to take some time and see. But it evolves where you know. The mother also talks a great deal about surrender. She says, for the guidance to have its maximum power, one must naturally add to it a conscious surrender. One must be sincerely determined to follow the indication given by the higher force. Well, she's saying this to all the members of the ashram, people who have given their whole life to studying these teachings. I say, surrender gradually. You know, if you're not in that deep, deep commitment and you've put your whole life that way, I really would say, you know, take your time as you choose a teacher. Take your time as you give yourself to something where you just, you know, because there are too many people that in the quotes spirituality community are not so spiritual. I mean, I was so naive when I first started coming into this community. It was amazing. But I remember, I'm just going to add a story. I remember once, the first time I ever went to study in England at the Arthur Findlay College, one of the first things the teacher got up and said was, the thing I want you to remember is that there are mediums in this world who get the most incredible information. It just knocks you off your seat. What I want you to understand is not everybody that is a great medium is a spiritual person. I thought, how could she say that? But it turns out to be true because people are people. And this is my own take on it. I figure source is using that person to bring through this proof of survival. If they're not a spiritual person, but they're really, really good at this, maybe source is going to say, okay, we'll let this person do it anyway, because they're bringing proof. And maybe they can't be everything. I don't know. That's just the way I kind of see it. So you need to be careful. I'm speaking to younger people right now. You need to be careful. Okay, let me see here. Points of interest. One other thing I wanted to mention is that if you do decide to get some books by Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, you will find that Indian teachers a lot of time speak very spatially, like they're talking about something that is in front and you finding something in back of it. They use the word widening a lot, widening your consciousness. I remember when I first read that word, I thought, what do they mean, widening my consciousness? But I would say instead of widening, I would say making room for. But you're going to find some language that's different than ours. But as I've gotten used to it, it's very useful language because the language they use is the tip of the iceberg. They're just describing something. The power that comes out of those words and what happens from that is the reality, not the words. Words are words. You know, words are kind of like notes in a musical composition. So if this interests you, look into it. It's wonderful, wonderful reading. Very slow reading with Sri Aurobindo, very quick reading with the Mother. So the takeaways from part 1. Simple intuition is common. Deeper intuitions may follow. It takes time, could be 20 years, to separate intuition from mind. Let me say that again. It takes time to separate intuition from mind. And the last takeaway is take time in choosing a teacher or a group. So that is the completion of part 1. Let me get to part 2. Okay, here I'm going to give you some practices. Now, some of you may be able to do this right along with me. Some of you may just listen to it, take some notes, and do it later. And some of you may not like it and never do it. Your choice. Okay, practices with deeper intuition. I have to share about labels first before we get into the exercises. When I was taught about physical phenomena, psychic phenomena, some call it metaphysical, supernatural, whatever you want to call it, everything had to be put into different categories. This is psychic. This is mediumistic. This is clairvoyance. This is clairaudience. This is intuitive. My feeling after many years, and I've been doing this for over 25 years and really started channeling in 1987. And my experience is that intuition is what brings all of those things to us. They come in different forms. I'd like you for the moment to picture intuition as like a beautiful ball, and it's opaque. And in that ball is the energy of intuition. And from that ball come out many antennas. So you've got antennae all coming out, sort of like a spiritual porcupine, maybe. I just thought of that at this moment. At any rate, think of that. And so if I'm having an intuition and my intuition reaches out, my vibration, my frequency reaches out to somebody in the room, it's only traveling a short distance. And I'm maybe picking up on something from someone that's in the room with me. If an antennae goes halfway across the country, it's still the same thing. Now, I used to think that was impossible. When I first started doing readings, I wouldn't do phone readings because I said that's impossible. And then someone begged me to do phone readings because they didn't have any mediums in their area. So I said, okay, I'll try it. And the information was just as good. And that's when I really realized that we're non-local. And if I could do that, if spirit could bring that to me, no matter where I was, I mean, to me, that's amazing. That's an amazing phenomena that can happen. But I learned so much from that. So you could get an intuition about someone you know. You could get an intuition about something that's going on halfway around the world. You could get an intuition from some other realm in the cosmos. I know that some of you are really into those kinds of things. I need to learn more about it. But there's no holds on this. I mean, we're really just learning how to travel with the intuition. So think of it as all intuition. And that's what I'm going to call it today. For me, it is the intuition is the source. And I also call it a force. And sometimes I like to say source is a force because I feel it as a force. I feel it as an energy. So, I'm going to say spirit or source. And now we'll start a couple practices. The first practice is called exercise your 6 senses. If you like, you can do this with me right now. So sit in a chair and we're going to exercise your senses. First, we're going to exercise your seeing. So I want you to look at something in the room. Look at something across the room. But don't just look at it. Look at it deeply. Feel as if your vibration is in training with whatever you're looking at. And see if you just get a little different feeling. We're not looking for evidence here or proving anything. We're looking for sensations. So you gaze and you look deeply. Okay, now clear your mind and your consciousness. Now we're going to take the sense of listening. So take your hands and clap with me. Now we're going to do it again. And the next time we do it, I want you to listen to it. Listen to how the sound starts, whether it gets louder or softer, how many times. Just listen to it in a not a casual way, but as if you're merging with the sound of clapping your hands. Let's go. I heard that there were 2 louder claps and there were softer. This is what happened for me, but you may have heard something different when in your clapping. So we've exercised your hearing. Now we're going to exercise the sense of smelling. find something in the room that you can smell. I'm going to grab a hairband of mine here, and I'm just going to smell it. But I'm going to see what the smell of this, actually, it smells like my shampoo, but we're going to see what the sense of smell, how it reacts when I'm not just doing it casually, when I'm merging with that smell. Where might that take me? I mean, if I were doing a reading, a smell like that, well, I've had situations like that where I'm in connection with someone on the other side, and all of a sudden I smell something, and I know that this woman wore a very strong perfume, or this man smoked a cigar, or whatever, because I actually smell it. So just smell something in the room and smell deeply. Next, we're going to exercise the sense of taste. Now, you may not have anything in the room, but maybe you have a piece of chocolate or something like that you could grab. So if you don't have anything that you can taste, just visualize that you're doing this. So I'm going to visualize I have an apple, and I'm going to taste it. Not casually, deeply. What does it taste like? How does that feel? How does tasting feel different than smelling, listening, looking? How do these senses feel different to you? When you practice this a lot, you get to know. You get to know whether a taste is coming in, whether a sight is coming in, whether a sound is coming in. You just know. Now we're going to do touch, your sense of touch. Grab something in the room. Maybe you have a throw pillow in the room, or even if you don't, you can, feel the fabric of the clothes you're wearing, because fabrics have very, very different feelings. So touch the fabric. I'm just going to touch my sleeve here. And touch it deeply. Sometimes when people have this experience, I've seen intuitives, they're touching a piece of fabric and they suddenly feel like they're taken back to who created this fabric, or the people involved in the manufacturing. All kinds of things can happen. And now the last is sensing. Now, we don't often get credit for the sixth sense, but the world's waking up a little bit. But sense how someone else in the room, a person or a pet, is feeling. If you don't have a person or a pet in the room with you, you're lucky if you have a pet, because they're easy to sense and they love it. Visualize it. So I don't have anybody in the room with me, but I'm going to sense. I'm looking at the picture of my teacher, VJ, and I'm going to sense VJ. And you sense whatever you're sensing. So if you do this slowly by yourself, sometime, later today or whenever you do it, take your time, and you may start to get an inkling of the difference of feeling between these senses. Now, one thing that's important to understand is why we're doing this. This may seem like a very simplistic exercise. Why is she having us do this? Let's go back to that ball of intuition, that beautiful see-through ball that's filled with the energy of intuition and all the antennae. In doing this exercise, you are tuning your instrument. You are the instrument picking up the intuition. You're tuning up your ability to look, listen, smell, taste, touch, sense. This is like lifting weights. And you do this over a period of time, and you're giving spirit an opportunity here, because spirit, you may have spirit all around you, and they very much want to give you things. Maybe you're a teacher and they want to give you things to teach. When I have a local class I've been with for 15 years, and I don't even make up lesson plans anymore. I come in and I channel, and then we do the exercise that I get that night. I don't even know. I never would have done that years ago. It would have terrified me. But at any rate, if you heighten your senses, you're giving spirit something to work with. You're giving them the ability to reach you. So if you want intuitions, then you got to tune up your instrument. I do have to tell a story here. Oh, this was so funny. This was when I was in my 20s, living in Greenwich Village in New York City. What a great place to live in your 20s. And one of the things that I noticed was that I could not wear a watch. Anytime I wore a watch, it would break. I went through about 5 watches. None of them would work. The other thing that was happening is that I was studying a more advanced level of guitar and actually teaching beginners at that point. And when let's see, okay, I'd be playing my guitar that had steel strings. And when I would play the steel strings, I would get rather damaging pains in the metal fillings in my teeth. And I didn't know what was going on. It wouldn't happen with the nylon strings. And I'd talk to dentists about it, and they didn't know. Now, of course, that I've studied sound healing, I know exactly what was happening. There was a vibration in those strings that somehow matched my fillings. I don't know, maybe I've got a concert going on in my mouth and I don't even know it. But something happened, and it was amazing. So you don't know what's going to happen when you start these exercises. So where are we next here? The next exercise is called psychometry. What is psychometry? When a person is able to hold an object in their hands that they know nothing about and receive information from the object. So that's all I'm going to tell you for the moment. So take a moment to find something in the room that you can hold in your hands. Something, just something small. I'm looking for something here. I have a lipstick here, so I'm going to hold the lipstick. So hold the object in your hand and ask the object about itself. Now, of course, this is something you own, so you're not going to find out too much you don't know, but I just want you to go through the procedure. Later, you're going to do it with another person. That's a whole other thing. But just hold the object and see what it tells you. That may sound insane to some people, but objects do tell you things. Talk to musicians. They have relationships with their guitars and keyboards and things, they know. So that's one kind of thing. For example, if I were holding a rock, I love to collect rocks from the ocean. So if I took one of my rocks that I have and I held it in my hand, let's say my rock told me that it had come from a location very far away from where I found it, that it had broken off from a very huge piece of rock and had traveled by water to where I found it. Now, unfortunately, there's no way for me to get any verification of that. The only way I could is if I wanted to, study rocks. And it might take me years to find out where that rock started from, or whether it actually was from where I was standing and I was wrong. My intuition was wrong. So I couldn't verify it. And it doesn't matter if you can verify this right now. You're just exercising your abilities. Okay, so that is psychometry by yourself. Now, for the next exercise, you want to practice with another person. If you happen to be with another person, you can try it. But first, I'd like to explain it to you. When you do a psychometric practice with another person, first of all, you schedule a time with the partner. Each of you arrives with an object that belonged to somebody that you know a lot about, but your partner doesn't know anything about them. For instance, you could bring a watch that belonged to a loved one that you knew very well, but don't bring a watch that you don't know who owned it. And even if you know who owned it, if you don't know anything about them, it's going to be very hard to do this exercise. And your partner should bring something, an object that belonged to somebody that your partner knew very well. So let's say your partner hands you a handbag that belonged to someone that she knew very well. And you say, you know, as I hold this handbag, I feel like it belonged to an aunt of yours, or possibly a great aunt. And your partner says, well, you're right that it did belong to a family member, but it wasn't my aunt. It was my grandmother's handbag. So now you're getting some verification. Actually, you did pretty well. I mean, the handbag could have belonged to her first grade teacher. Anybody. You got that it's from a relative. You didn't get the right relative. So 50-50 there. But that is a way you can get verification by practicing with a partner. Then after you've done that exercise, then you give her an object and you go through the same process. I want to tell you a story. When I was first studying to be a medium, or I wasn't studying to be a medium, I was a medium trying to figure out what's happening to me. That's how it happens. And one of my first teachers' name was Nancy Garber. And Nancy Garber, that's where I learned that particular exercise. She told us, next week when you come to class, each bring an object that belonged to someone you know a lot about. So I brought something with me, and I sat down with the person who had been chosen to be my partner. And my partner wanted me to go first. So she handed me a chopstick. So I'm holding this chopstick in my hand. I'm probably in my 50s. And terrified. I hold the chopstick in my hand, and all of a sudden I have a vision of an elderly woman who had tuberculosis. My first reaction is, I can't say that to her. I can't say that's impossible. How can that happen? How can spirit do that? But I got up my nerve and I said, well, you know, I feel like I see a woman, she looks quite elderly, and she had tuberculosis. And my partner said, that's right. Well, I practically fell on the floor. I mean, that was the first time I ever had an experience like that, and it blew me away. And it blew me away that it could happen. I'm not blown away that it happened to me. Quite frankly, I had beginner's luck because I could do that exercise many times after that. And sometimes I was verified as wrong. But for whatever reason, I had beginner's luck, and it really encouraged me to keep going because now I was hooked. I was really fascinated at how a chopstick could talk to me. And that led me eventually to psychometrizing some historical houses. I wouldn't do haunted houses because I don't like to be around anything that's called haunted, and it's just not my thing. So, but I will go to a house if it's historical, or I don't do that anymore. And that's the reason why. So I went to this one house and they said, well, we're going to have an audience of 100 people here, and you're going to do that. You're going to tell them, we're going to go from room to room. You're going to tell them what happened. I said, we can't do it that way. They said, why? I said, because how am I going to tell the difference between the spirits of the house and the spirits that are around all the people that are there? I have to be in the house alone, and I can take notes. None of you can be in the house. I have to be in the house alone. So it's just me and the walls and the furniture. So I did. I went to each room and took notes. And then they brought the audience in, and I got up on the stage and I read my notes. And then they hadn't told me, but they had a historian there. And the historian verified about 95%. So now I was learning that you can get information from the walls. You can get spiritual seekers often go into a space, and they may not be trained in the kind of exercises I'm telling you about, but I know a lot of you who are listening to this must think about, gee, when I was in this church, or when I was in Egypt, or, different places that you were, and you felt like you were getting some information, you probably were. Because this is what happens. The energy is imprinted there. I don't know how. I call myself the I don't know medium because I'm asked questions a lot about things. And if I don't know, I just say, I don't know, because a lot of people give an answer because they think they have to be smart. They think they have to know everything. And for some reason, if you're psychic, people expect you to know everything. And of course you don't. So I don't know why that is, but it is. So that is what we're going to do in terms of psychometry today. So okay. Go on to another exercise. This is a very important exercise. I call it consciousness travel. This is important for your convenience, and sometimes it's important for your safety. You need to learn how to let only part of your awareness leave your body and then intentionally come back to your body. So if you can, I'd like you to do this along with me while you're listening. Give you a second to get comfortable. Okay. So picture your intuitive ball with the antennae that I talked about. And if you like, close your eyes and visualize that your awareness is going to the other side of the room. You're not trying to find anything. You're just taking a walk. Your consciousness is taking a walk to the other side of the room. So you're going. And now you decide, my consciousness is coming back. So you visualize it coming back. Now, this is really important because a lot of us who do this kind of work, when we first started, we get scared we're not going to get back. I don't know anyone who hasn't gotten back, but there's a feeling of that. So you want to feel like you're in charge when you do this work. And this is a great, simple exercise that can help you know that you're in charge. All right, so close your eyes again. And this time, picture that your consciousness is going to another side of the country that you live in, a really far distance. And now bring it back. Put your feet on the floor, feel like you're grounded, really grounded. And now, for those of you who would like this and maybe already do this, send your consciousness out into the cosmos, past the Earth's atmosphere to another planet, or just see where you land. Okay? Go. Send. and now have it come back. There's a lot of questions that come up when you start thinking about consciousness traveling. I'm not an expert in quantum physics or quantum mechanics, but I watch a lot of things, I read some things, and when I think about consciousness traveling now, I think, well, are we really traveling, or is everything really just a pinpoint? It's an interesting question. Do we go back in time and forward in time, or is there no time, really? I mean, it just has my head spinning at the moment because I'm thinking about a lot of these things. So we don't totally know what's happening. Or there may be people, teachers, who know much more than I do about it. But I can do it, but I'm still amazed by it. So I want to tell you a little story as to why you need to be able to bring your consciousness back and know you're bringing it back. And I'm not always good at this, I will admit it. It's something I have to work on. So yesterday, I was in a very creative mood. I was having ideas for songs and teaching that I want to do and all kinds of stuff. And I had a can of ginger ale in my hands. I know I shouldn't be drinking ginger ale, but I was having a ginger ale. So I'm walking across the floor and getting into sort of a bit of a trance. And I no longer really, I don't realize the ginger ale's in my hand anymore. And my hand tips and the ginger ale pours on the floor. Well, I was really annoyed with myself, and I was annoyed because my creative idea was disrupted. Plus, I now had to stop everything, go get some paper towels and clean up the ginger ale because somebody might walk through that room in the house and slip, or I might forget it was there and slip. So it was just annoying. It's very annoying to me when I do things like that. But I've noticed, that a lot of my colleagues who are mediums, many of us have this issue because we're out there a lot. So, knowing where we are all the time may be an occupational hazard. So protect yourself. Okay, let me see where we are here. The takeaway when traveling for your consciousness is that you gain control over yourself. One of the first things that was said to me when I went to the Arthur Findlay College is that you are in control. Spirit does not control you. If spirits start coming to you at all odd hours and the stuff, you set hours. And when you start developing a relationship with guidance that you're working with, I call mine guidance. There are a lot of people who channel that have all different names, but I found that I could negotiate with them. They've negotiated with me since 1987 when I need to, they want me to do something and I say, but I can't do it that way. I need to do it this way, please. And we negotiate. And it was so interesting because I was watching YouTube the other day, Tom Kenyon, and he was saying something about negotiating with the Hathors, that he can, they have regular conversations. And I said, oh, it made me happy to hear that because that's what I do. I negotiate. And sometimes I even yell, like if I've been doing a demonstration and, I'll say, if you don't give me this right information in front of all these people, I'm quitting, It's a very interesting dynamic relationship that I have with what I call guidance. So you need to know that you're in charge. So we're moving on to another section here. Just give me a minute. Get myself organized. Obstacles. There are certain obstacles that get in the way of getting good information. I don't feel I have the right quotes I'm looking for, so let me interrupt myself. Okay. Obstacles that get in the way. One of the obstacles is always having to follow instructions. Now, basically, we should follow instructions when we have a teacher, but this is a dilemma. Let's say that I'm doing a color healing session with someone, and I have a chart, and it said, red is needed for this, yellow is needed for that, blue is needed for that. So I've got a client and I'm looking at the client, and based on her issues, I look at the chart, she needs red. But my intuition is telling me this particular client in this particular moment and this particular moment in the life of the condition she has needs yellow. What do I do? Well, there's no really good answer to this, but this is my answer. This is what I would tell my students. It depends on how experienced you are and how serious the condition is. If you have very little experience, follow the chart. Maybe you're not ready to sort of go off on your own intuitional feeling at the moment. If you have somebody that you're working with that has a very serious condition, I would follow the rules exactly. Or if it still doesn't feel right, to get a second opinion from a colleague or get an opinion from your teacher. You have to make these decisions about when to use your intuition and when not to. Personally, I don't like charts too well. I think they're very, very necessary. And I learn them. But I've just found that I don't think it's that. My intuition tells me it's more complicated than red is for this, yellow is for that. So maybe I trust my guidance more than the charts sometimes. But then I've been working for a long time. So that's one of the obstacles. That's something for you to think about. I can't give you answers to this, but I can just tell you it's something to think about. The other thing that gets in the way of intuition are emotions. So let's say I'm talking to a friend of mine on the phone, and we're going to get together tomorrow. And I say, so shall we go to a nice restaurant in the area, or should we go to the food truck people have been talking about? And my friend says, oh, let's go to the food truck. And I say, okay. So the next day I meet up with her, and I've got a list of all the nice restaurants in town. And I say, which one would you like to go to? And she looks at me and she says, we talked on the phone yesterday and we agreed we were going to the food truck. And I say, are you sure? Because I've changed it around in my mind because I don't want to go to the food truck. So I have changed it around. Now, I don't do that too often, but I do it occasionally. And I have some friends who do it a lot, and it's really annoying. But the reason I'm telling you this story is it's a great example of how emotions can get in the way of what we know. This isn't particularly about intuition, but it's about how your mind can play with things. And in that way, it's totally about intuition because your mind plays with things a lot. So the takeaway is when you have a strong emotion, try to let go of your opinion, listen to your intuition, and then think about it. Ultimately learn how different an intuition feels from an opinion. And then there's the whole issue of, okay, so let's say you have an opinion and you don't agree with your intuition. Well, you're in charge. You don't have to follow your intuition. And it's good to be able to know if you can feel that you disagree with your intuition, now you're feeling the two different things going on here. This is a great time to get a sense of what's your thoughts and what is coming to you from a higher source. It's a great experience. To me, an intuition often feels like a gentle breeze. If I get something that I think is an intuition and it's very, very dramatic and I feel very intense about it, it's usually my emotions. When I get an intuition, it's like it just drops into my head. You know, it's just very easy. I don't know what you'll experience. I never know what students are going to experience, and I never want to tell them what to experience because then I'm closing them off. If I say, look for a gentle breeze, and their spiritual guidance doesn't like gentle breezes, they might feel an itch on their left ear. How do I know? So don't put yourself in a box. Listen to your teachers, and then you have to have your own experiences. The next obstacle is very interesting. It's about competition between students, between colleagues, or both. In the, quote, spiritual community, there's competition as much as there is in any other community, I think. We compete to have the best message. We compete to have an intuition that was verified more than somebody else's intuition. And we really need to get over this because all those competitive thoughts and feelings going on in one's mind, what is it doing? It's not leaving you open. You're consumed. The intuition might be there trying to get to you, and it's saying to itself, I can't get to her. All she's thinking about is what the other student did. So make room for your intuition. Just get rid of those feelings. They're normal. You know, we're competitive beings in our society. But spiritual development is not a competitive sport. Let's say that all together. Spiritual development is not a competitive sport. That's something to really work on. Focus on developing your relationship to spirit, because that's who's going to give you the information. That's who you're going to ultimately feel taken care of by, protected by. I mean, it's just developing a relationship with a higher guidance is one of the best experiences I'm having in my life. I can remember what I was like before I had this, although I kind of had it as a child, but the way it's developed as an adult, you know, I wouldn't trade it for anything. My teachers in England, Brenda Lawrence, Nora Shaw, and Glenn Edwards, each in their own way said to me at some point, Carole Lynne, I can't teach you to be a medium, to be an intuitive, to be a healer. All I can do is create an atmosphere where you feel safe, teach you exercises, tell you experiences I've had. But Carole, spirit is your teacher. And it's true. And I finally came to understand that. Now I've taught for a lot of years. As I said, I've had some people with me for 15 years. And I've learned that I couldn't teach them either. Spirit taught them, but I could help them connect with spirit. And so it's been a really incredible journey. So focus on developing your relationship to spirit. Okay, we are getting close to the end of my lecture now. What do I want to say? If you want to have a great relationship with spirit, it's important, as said before, that you have to know that you're in charge. You don't just follow every order you get, because some you may disagree with and some may not really be from spirit. You have to develop what is called discernment. And that takes a long time. Don't be in a rush. People, this is not something that, well, there are a lot of people say, I want to be this, I want to be that. But the best spiritual workers didn't say that. Spirit chose them. Somehow, through different experiences they had, they were asked, they had a calling. But always remember that you don't have to accept the calling. You're in charge. In fact, I just want to tell one more little story. When I was 13 years old, I had been brought up in a church and I was there for confirmation. I was being confirmed. And I didn't like all the words that they said. So I put my hands behind my back and crossed my fingers. And I was saying in my mind, God, I don't believe all these words. So just know that I believe I'm connecting with you, but I don't believe all these words. So then I felt that what I called God then, that I now call guidance, said to me, well, we want you to work with us. You're going to help heal people in different ways. I said, oh no, I'm going into show business. I was from a show business family and all I was interested in was performing. So this negotiation went on while I'm being confirmed. So I said in my mind to guidance, well, how about this? How about I be in show business for the first half of my life, and then I'll work with you in that way. And a deal was made. In fact, the whole story of that is in my book called Cosmic Connection, which you can get on Amazon. And any of you who are interested in channeling or really going much deeper, it's quite an interesting book. I was much more skeptical when I wrote that than I am now, but I always come from where I am when I write a book. So you've got to know you're in charge. You've got to know that you don't have to do everything you're told to, or you can negotiate. And if you take this spiritual path in a sincere way, you are going to really have a different life. I mean, it's just amazing. That doesn't mean you'll become a millionaire or you'll get everything you want. It doesn't protect you from getting serious diseases. It doesn't do any of that. That's all about your body. But your spirit, your soul, you're going to have a great relationship. And then you'll be able to help yourself much better. And if you take the calling, if you're called to help others, you'll be able to do it because you're not doing it by yourself. So thank you very, very much for listening to me. And I wish I could see you all, but I kind of, there's sort of a field here that I feel people, other places that might be watching. So I wish you a very wonderful journey. And thank you.
Nice. Okay, I've got a few questions. First, how do you spell Sri Aurobindo?
SRI space AUROBINDO.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Sri Aurobindo Ashram. You can get to it online. And they
Cool.
have all kinds of things.
So I've got an interesting journey that's happened. You know, I was talking to a psychic about 4 years ago, and she said, here's the Hathors. And I'm like, oh, I know those guys. And because I've worked with Tom Kenyon. And she said they want to build a superhighway between your pituitary and pineal gland so you can be in more connection. And since then, my intuition's kind of gone off the deep end. And so there's a few things. It's funny because, first of all, it's almost like I've pinned down goosebumps and chills.
What do you mean you pinned them down?
Well, you know, I would get goosebumps and chills for all my life, and sometimes I see purple. But then I started really paying attention to the quality of the goosebumps and chills. And
Okay.
sometimes it's just a little bing, and sometimes it's like, whoa, right? And then I started asking, instead of doing the pendulum or doing muscle testing, I just thought, oh, I'll just use those goosebumps and chills because I get them all the time. So I started asking questions. And I thought, okay, how big are the goosebumps? And over the last few years, it's like, okay, do I get a big wave of energy that goes through my whole body, or is it kind of like nothing or blah, right? And so I've been using that,
Well,
which is
that's how you're being spoken to.
right, right. Now there's
That's
one
that.
thing that's really funny, I have to tell you. When I wake up in the morning, I stay in bed for about an hour and I do meditations with crystals and stuff and different higher beings. And there's funny, I've got guides that check in on my to-do list without me even thinking about it. So
Yeah.
it's really funny. It's like, oh, you forgot to put this on your to-do list. And I'm not doing a mental process. And then after about 15 or 20 minutes of to-do list stuff, then I kind of go in the zone and I look at my health and different aspects and what's going on in my life. And then I get more downloads at that point.
Well, I know you. So,
Uh-huh.
so I could see why your spirit guides would go like a list like that of your to do. Not because I think you're forgetful, but that would be a good way to speak to you because you're all that. You're organizing all these things.
Yeah,
They're not going to
first.
they're not going to speak to me that way.
Yeah, yeah.
So spirit, a lot of people in the field feel that spirit uses each of our minds because that's what they have to work with. One of the proofs of that is I have a student who works in the medical field. That's his regular job. And he is a fabulous intuitive psychic and medium. And he can get medical things that none of us could get
Mm.
because he has all that structure in his mind. And so he can see it. Spirit can use that structure. And when he says that to the client, um, we find out whether he's making it up or whether it's true, but it's usually true.
There's a great thing that I learned from Richard Feather Anderson, who's our sacred geometry instructor that
Yeah.
you took. And he said, what he'll do is he'll use his mind and figure out the sacred geometry architecture of a building that someone has, asked him to build. And he will figure it out mentally and based on his knowledge as much as possible. And once he's got the structure together, then he goes in and says, okay, Spirit, tell me how to shift it, which is what you're saying is people that often spirit's not going to build a building from scratch. You got to learn how to build a building, but once you learn how to build the building, spirit will help to help shift it a little bit until
Oh,
it's
yes. Oh, that's such an important point, David, because, what if somebody, what if somebody told somebody they should be a pilot? Are they going to let spirit tell them what to do?
right, right,
They got
right.
to learn how to fly an airplane.
Right. It's kind of the same with music too. It's like, well,
Yes.
you got to learn how to play the guitar, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then spirit can use what you put in your head.
I love it. So, okay, so here's an interesting thing. I used to think, okay, if I'm a good person and I get good karma for a long time, then spirit's going to go, okay, let's open up another level of seeing and intuition. And it doesn't seem to work that way because I know some people that are actually really amazing intuitives that are actually not really good people at all.
You mean as people?
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was saying in part of the lecture, that some great mediums are not necessarily very spiritual people at all. The
So I'm
two
like,
things.
okay, there was one person told me it's not about karma, it's more about your intention, where you actually are able to say, I want this power. What do you think about that?
I think Well, all I can tell you is my experience.
Hmm.
Spirit sees into me and uses the powers that are natural to me and that I have. All right. Probably my best, I'm not going to call it a power, but probably the thing I do best is seeing into people and helping them see into themselves so they can really express themselves. And so that's what spirit does with me. They don't send me to build a building. I'd get killed just walking
Right.
on the lot, you know? I mean, we can't, I don't know. I would see, if I were you, I would just say to spirit, I'd like more.
Nice. I
I'd
like
like to
that.
go deeper.
Nice. Nice. I like that. Okay, here's a interesting thing is sometimes I get a little feel a little strange when someone says my intuition says that you should do this.
Yeah.
And I think, well, wait a second. And what about my intuition?
Well, the way I was trained, and we had very particular training on this, is you never give anybody an intuition unless they ask for it.
Hmm.
And when we were in training, we weren't allowed to do it except in class. Like when we stayed at the Arthur Findlay College, you know, we all stayed there for a week or 2 weeks. And we weren't, when we were up in our rooms and the dorm and everything, we weren't allowed to do any readings or anything because we had to learn to be disciplined. So I will never give somebody an intuition unless they ask me. And then if it's a professional situation, then they came to me for a reading. So they've given me permission. If it's a friend of mine, I really have to kind of weigh it. You know, it depends on my relationship with a particular person. I might say, I might say, do you want my hit on this? Or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you want your privacy. Now there are mediums who have people, this drives mediums crazy. They give a demonstration and all these people come up to them. And one says, while you were giving that demonstration, I saw this spirit on the other side of you, or my spirit guide told me you shouldn't be eating oatmeal or whatever it is. And it's really intrusive.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's even more interesting when you're really close to someone like a soulmate or even a twin flame, and you start seeing information for them. But it's like you got to be really careful because they're their own sovereign being.
They got to have their own journey. You know, like when I'm working with a student, I ask them what they think their journey is. I don't tell them what I think their journey is. I ask them, you know, they talk. And then if I pick up on something, I'll say, do you want to hear anything? Or, you know, it totally depends on the client.
Cool. I love it.
It
You
is.
know,
So,
I've got a friend I've gotten really close to, and I can hear her thoughts. And I know when she runs love, because we've run love together on the phone, and I can feel it immediately. I'll be just working on the computer, and all of a sudden, this wave of energy of love comes over me. I'm like, "Hi," and it's really, it's almost, I almost feel in like I'm, you know, if I tune into her, I'm like not being cool. I mean, I should be careful to not invade her space, but sometimes it just
well,
happens.
this is a very close friend.
Yeah.
So this is different than other situations. At least that's how I feel. I mean, with my husband, I'll say things, but there's a lot of things I've never said to my husband about him because he is such a different person than I am. Great person. Thank God he's not like me. I don't know what we do two of this in the house, but but I believe people have to have their own journey, and who am I to know why they might be stumbling with such and such?
Nice.
And who am
Well,
I to know whether my solution for their stumbling is right for what they're going through? It's just, you
right.
have to make judgment calls.
You know, when it comes to sound, like sometimes I know what instrument or bowl to play next, where to put the tuning fork right on the person. And I always say the main thing is learn to be more and more still so that you can hear it. It's kind of
That's
exactly
right.
everything you're saying. Get, I mean, get all the stuff out of the way. And sound is so good at getting you to that still point where you can hear. As Bev in Mount Shasta used to say, you just got to be still enough to hear it.
And you can send energy to people without telling them. Like, this doesn't have to do with telling someone particular, but in the 80s, I went to massage school and graduated massage school. I went to all kinds of things that now, what would happen to me is spirits would come to me. So after a while, I said, okay, I got the point. but but I would only use massage with my voice students because I was sick of telling them to relax. I had to show them how to relax. So I massaged this one person one day, and I got this idea in my head that I should stand and send a lot of energy, a lot of blue energy through the whole body. I didn't say a word. I just started doing it. And the student said, "What are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean? What am I doing?" He said, "I don't know. I just feel something going through me." I said, "What color is it?" He said, "Blue." So experience it. If you open up to this and say, "I want more," I feel things will start happening to you that will prove certain things to you.
Nice. Well, thank you so much. This is just it's really like it's really such a great journey to really think about and really start bringing in for everyone. I think it's a great
Well,
service
thank you
you're
very
doing.
much for having me. I
My
really
pleasure.
enjoyed it.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.